Good day and welcome to Predators Proclivity. This is a podcast where we look at data from the season for the NHL Nashville Predators and make comments upon it. I am your host, Preston Proctor. And this weekend, we do have back-to-back games. So I will be covering both of those games here. In this podcast, this is Friday, and we've got Chicago tonight in Chicago. And then tomorrow, we're back here in Nashville for one game, and we'll play the Columbus Blue Jackets. So back-to-back in different cities, at least, well, I guess they're both night games, but at least tomorrow night's game is a night game. It's not on Saturdays. They try to make it a little bit earlier. But with the back-to-back, at least it's at night. Okay, so that's what we've got going on. And so tonight's opponent, the Nashville Predators are on the road to take on the Chicago Blackhawks. The Blackhawks are 2-4-1 overall and 1-2 at home. They are in 7th place in the Central Division with 5 points. They started this season with a 4-game road trip and went 1-3 on that trip, losing to Utah and Winnipeg in overtime. They then beat Edmonton and lost to Calgary. They are at the end of a 4-game homestand, and they are 1-2 so far. They beat San Jose, and they lost to Buffalo and Vancouver. Goaltender Mrazek has played 5 of the games. He's 2-3. He has wins at Edmonton and San Jose, losses with Utah, Calgary, and Vancouver. Soderblom, the other goaltender, lost in overtime at Winnipeg and lost at home versus Buffalo. In the offseason, the Chicago Blackhawks made a number of changes with their current lineup, having a few new people. The current roster has 27. 20 is the cut size, but so forwards that are not on the team this year of note. Unrestricted free agent Mackenzie Entwistle was signed by Florida. Tyler Johnson remains unsigned by anybody. And Taylor Radish was signed by Washington. If I remember right, Johnson is on a tryout with Boston, but I haven't heard anything, hadn't seen anything lately. Say that. That didn't look today, but who knows? New forwards to look forward to. Unrestricted free agent Tyler Bertuzzi signed from Toronto. Pat Maroon from Boston, Craig Smith from Dallas, and Teuvo Teravainen from Carolina. Those are unrestricted free agents that they signed. Bertuzzi, Maroon, Smith, and Teravainen. Also got Ilya Mikheyev. Ilya Mikheyev. In a trade back in June. So they got Ilya Mikheyev and Sam Lafferty and a 4th-round 2027 draft pick from Vancouver for a 2nd-round 2027 draft pick. Sam Lafferty was an unrestricted free agent. He got signed by Buffalo. So I don't really know how all that works. I guess he was an unrestricted free agent and got traded and then got signed by somebody else. So couldn't have been a big part of that trade, but I don't know. Anyhow, so the Ilya Mikheyev with the trade, new forward to Chicago. Defenseman of note, not with the team, Kevin Korchinski. He is playing in the AHL for Chicago, the Rockford Ice Hogs. So he was on the roster some last season. He'll probably be called up again, but he's starting his season with the Rockford Ice Hogs. Gotta love some of these names. Anyhow, new defenseman, Nolan Allen came up from Rockford. TJ Brody, an unrestricted free agent from Toronto. Austin Strand, also from Rockford. And of note, Alec Martinez, an unrestricted free agent from Vegas, but he's on injured reserve. If you've followed hockey or listened to this, Alec Martinez was with the Kings way back when, and they won the Stanley Cup. So I always liked him. He's an offensive defenseman, but won't be very offensive if he's in injured reserve. Goalie changes. The only goalie change is that they added Laurent Brossolt, an unrestricted free agent from Winnipeg, but he's on injured reserve too. So we don't need to worry about him tonight. But those are kind of the roster changes, things to look for, people to look for, and who not to look for in tonight's game. Last year, they started off their season by sprinkling a couple of wins amidst a bunch of losses, going 3-5 in their first 8 games. 6 of those were on the road, and both of the 2 home games were losses. Going into their 4th home game, which is what tonight is for them, they were 1-2 at home, and they lost the 4th game at home. So I don't know how much their season doesn't really look like last year, but that's the circumstance from last year at this time for them. Tonight's game is the last game of a 4-game homestand, and starting tomorrow night, they go on a 5-game road trip. So they also have to play a back-to-back in different cities, which is just how things go. So they are going to go on a 5-game road trip. They start in Dallas tomorrow night, then they go to Colorado, San Jose, LA, and Anaheim. That is the Anaheim Ducks, not the Los Angeles Ducks playing in Anaheim. One of the dumbest, in my opinion, names of a team ever. But hey, nobody asked me. And then so with back-to-back games, I'm expected to see Soderblom in goal tonight, and they'll save Mrazek on tap for Dallas. Or it could be the other way around. But I would expect to see like Soderblom in goal. Okay, so that is the Blackhawks. The Preds. The Preds are now 1-5. 1-5. Hey, there's a 1 in there now. There's a win in there now. They are 1-0 away. They've only played 1 game on the road so far. They are 8th in the Central Division with 2 points. Colorado did jump past Chicago into 6th, so the Preds trail tonight's opponent by 3 points. They are tied with San Jose at league bottom. I guess that's something I should have taken a look, because San Jose may have played, and they may have played, but they still only have 2 points. They are still at the bottom of the league with 2 points, tied with the Preds, but the San Jose's 2 points came from 2 overtime losses, and so the Preds win breaks that tie and puts them ahead of San Jose. So there is 1 team behind us. 1, 2, 3, 4 teams ahead of us is Chicago, and then 6 teams ahead of us, Columbus. So really good matchups. The game should be competitive. That's what I like to say. The games may not be good hockey, but the game will be competitive. So at least that's something. All right. So tonight's game is the only game on this road trip. One day, well, I guess they did a couple days off, but So did Chicago and Columbus. But yeah, so they'll go to Chicago, one game on this road trip, and then tomorrow night back in Nashville versus Columbus. Then they will go to Tampa for one game road trip, and that will be Monday. And then they'll be back in Nashville for 3. They'll play Edmonton, Colorado, and Los Angeles. And that's Thursday, Saturday, Monday. Last season, the Preds were 3-4 in their first 7 games, going 2-2 at home and 1-2 on the road. And all that is different now. They were 0-2 in their first 2 road games, losing to Tampa Bay and Boston. So this being the second road game of this year, hopefully we'll have a different record than last year. Tonight's matchup. Tonight is the first of 2 games in Chicago. We alternate road and home games. January, February, and March are the next 3. They'll be home, away, home. And last year, Nashville swept Chicago, including a shootout win in the first road game, which that last year was the second meeting. The Preds won their last game on Boston Tuesday, against Boston on Tuesday at home, and Chicago is on a 2-game losing streak. So last year, Chicago was swept by Nashville. Hopefully we can keep that trend going. The Preds have won their last game. I don't think you can have a 1-game winning or losing streak. I guess you can, but I don't. I don't call it that. So they won their last game against Boston on Tuesday in Nashville, and Chicago is on a 2-game losing streak. The Preds on the road. The Preds are 0-1 on the road, losing in the second game of the year to Detroit 0-3. In that game, Detroit got the first goal of the game in the second period, which was fairly rare last year. And that was the only goal for that period. Detroit added a goal early in the third and then an empty net goal. The Preds did not get the first goal of the game. They tied 1 period and lost 2 periods. And losing 2 periods, you're going to lose the game. That was last year's record anyway, and probably, I can see where, losing 2 periods, you could still win the game. Technically it did happen, but they also won 2 periods because the Preds went to overtime. So that happened last season where they lost 1-2. But if you lose 2 and you tie 1, or put it bluntly or a different way, if you don't win a period, you're not going to win the game. As far as of last year and what they did on the road when they did not get the first goal, they were 5-9-2. 5-9-2. So not getting the first goal on the road last year wasn't the harbinger that it was if they got the goal at home last year. Last year at home, they had like a 3-1 advantage winning the game if they got the first goal. That has not been the case this season, but it's early. But last year wasn't a huge problem not getting it. I mean, they still lost, 11 games, but 1-5. When the goal was scored, the first goal of the game was scored in the second period last year, they were 1-2. Again, it wasn't the first goal in the second period was not common, as not typically common, but 1-2 last season on the road when the first goal happens in the second period. When they tie the first period and lose the second, last year they were 1-4. So, yeah. In games on the road where they were losing after the second period, they had been 2-6-5 in the first. So if they were losing the game going into the third period, they had won 2 of the first periods, lost 6 of them, and tied 5. So then again, not not really strong indicator. Following the third period, if they're losing at the end of the second period, then in the third period last year, they were 3-10. And then, so 3-10 in the third period. If they were losing going into the third period, that pretty good indication that they're going to lose the third period too. And overall, the record was 2-11. So anyway, so last year in October, they were 1-3 on the road. So that's the Preds. That's the Preds stats on the road for what that's worth. And so now let's take a look at tomorrow night's opponent. Tomorrow night, the Predators are home to take on the Columbus Blue Jackets. The Blue Jackets are 3-3-0, 3-3-0, 1-0 on the road. They are 6th in the Metropolitan Division with 6 points, tied with Islanders, but they have more wins to break that tie. They have been alternating wins and losses this season, starting with a road loss to Minnesota. Minnesota, they've also completed their series with Minnesota, just like the Preds have with Detroit this early in the game, and they're done with one team. They also lost at home to Minnesota. They got a road loss and a home loss. And so I'm guessing they're glad not to have to see Minnesota anymore. Goalie Tarasov has played 4 of the games. He's 3-1. He has all the wins. They're 3-3. He's 3-1. He's won at Colorado, Buffalo, and Toronto, and lost the second Minnesota game. Merzlikins got the opener at Minnesota, a loss, and then Florida, a loss. The next game is home versus Edmonton. So I'm expecting that we will see Tarasov in net tonight. And Merzlikins will be saved for Edmonton. But Tarasov is Tarasov is their main goalie, so who knows what they'll do with that. I guess more importantly, what are the Preds going to do with the back-to-back? With Chicago and Columbus, my guess would be Saros tonight for Chicago, and then Wedgwood tomorrow night. But we'll see. We will see. Okay, so the Blue Jackets, in the offseason, they made a number of changes. Their current lineup also has a few new people. Of note, forwards of note not with the team, Alexander Texier was traded to St. Louis for a 4th round 2025 pick, and Johnny Gaudreau. Most people are probably aware he was killed while riding the bike with his brother. Awful. An awful situation. But Johnny Gaudreau is not with the team in human form anyway. He is in their hearts. It's been a tough season for them from that standpoint. I'm a biker. I race every now and then. I ride my bike outside. It's my brother that got hit by a car just a couple of years ago. He's kind of given up. Hey, where's some wood? I've been lucky. I've had cars try to force me off the road, but I've not had any incidents with vehicles. So lucky. I do have friends that. So I got a friend of mine. Somebody leaned out the car and hit him in the butt, knocked him off the road. Stupid people. There was a police car right behind them. He had a handprint on his butt for a week, and they went to jail. All right. Well, anyway, so that's the forwards not with the team. New forwards in their lineup: Zachary Aston Reese, an unrestricted free agent from Detroit via Vegas. That one I couldn't quite figure out because it said he was signed by Vegas, but somehow he's signed by Vegas from Detroit, but he was on Columbus's team. I tried to figure that one out and then just gave up. So I'm not exactly sure. But last year he was with Detroit and he was signed by Vegas, but now he's with Columbus. So that's Zachary Aston Reese. Jordan Dumais, called up from the Halifax Mooseheads. Gotta love that. Halifax Mooseheads. Kevin LeBlanc, unrestricted free agent from San Jose. Caden Lindstrom from the Medicine Hat Tigers. Probably not forwards of note, but new forwards and some fun teams. And then Sean Monahan, unrestricted free agent from Winnipeg. And James Van Riemsdyk, unrestricted free agent from Boston. Probably the one to really look for there is Riemsdyk. Defenseman not on the team of note: Jake Bean, unrestricted free agent, signed by Calgary. And then Eric Goodbronson has had shoulder surgery, so he is not in the lineup. New defenseman. New defensemen are Jordan Harris, in a trade with Montreal for Patrick Lane and a second-round 2026. Jack Johnson, unrestricted free agent from Colorado. This is his second stint with Columbus. He was there for 7 years after being in LA for 6. And then after Columbus, he kind of bounced around a little bit, but now he's back with Columbus. Never fond of him when he played for LA. It's probably more that he was supposedly trained by Blake, the Flake. Rob Blake, who is now in the administration of the LA Kings, was the captain of the Kings. Till he decided just to sit out, and because he wanted to be traded to a team that was going to win the Stanley Cup, and now he's in the administration. But supposedly, he taught Jack Johnson how to be a really good NHL goaltender. Now, what I remember about Blake when I was there is that if the Kings were in a tough situation in the third period, Blake would wind up taking a penalty and leaving them shorthanded. That's what I remember happening. And sure enough, Jack Johnson learned how to do that. Not exactly what you're looking for when you're deep in the third period, you're losing, taking a stupid penalty. But that's the Rob Blake way that I remember. Now, other people might remember other things about him. No, I do not like Rob Blake, and I think he sucks as a kid running the Kings. And that's how I feel. Now, he doesn't care what I think. I'm sure he doesn't. He might be a nice guy. I have no idea. Probably if he was a real jerk, he wouldn't have that job. But hey, whatever. I'm just a fan, and I don't like Rob Blake, and I never have. And there you go. But that's one thing I remember. Jack Johnson picked up that trick of getting the late penalty to hamstring the Kings when they needed a goal. I hope he's worked his way out of that. But whenever I see him, I just can't let it go. Oh, sure, he's a good kid too. I don't know these people personally, I'm just a fan. You can't take it personally. That's just how I feel, And if I knew you, maybe I'd feel differently. But that's just how it goes. Met a lot of kings, because I lived in L.A. We'd go to the functions and, met a lot of the kings, the historical kings, and Jim Fox, and got a picture with him a couple times. And anyway, but I like Jim Fox. I've always kind of liked Jim Fox. But anyhow. Yes, and this is, let's get back on topic. So anyway, that's the new defensemen, Jordan Harris and Jack Johnson. There really aren't any goalie changes. Merzlikins and Tarasov were both with the team last year. Merzlikins played 41 games and Tarasov played 24. And so they had three other goalies that played in 23 games. The math didn't work out there, but that's, I guess, the games they appeared in. So Tarasov and Merzlikins were both around last year, so not really any goalie changes. Last year they did start off the season okay, 3-2. Then they lost 4, won 1, and lost 9. So at some point their season really turned poorly. They were 1-1 on the road at the start. The win was in overtime as well. They seem to have a lot of one-game road trips at the beginning of the season, and that might be part of their issue. And just like tomorrow night's game, it's a one-game road trip for them. And tomorrow night will be their third road game. Again, tomorrow night's game is their only game on this road trip, and then they go home for 3 games. The Predators. The Predators are now 1-5, 1-4-0 at home, 1-5-0, 1-4-0 at home. They are 8th in the Central Division with 2 points. Like I said, Colorado jumped past Chicago, tied with San Jose at the league bottom. Tomorrow night's game is the only game in this homestand, and then after that they travel to Tampa and then back to Nashville for 3. Last season, the Preds were 4-4 in their first 8 games, going 3-2 at home and 1-2 on the road. They were 3-3 in their first 6 home games, beating Seattle, losing to Boston, beating San Jose, losing to Vancouver, beating Toronto in overtime, lost to Arizona. So they alternated wins and losses. I don't really like that trend, but I do like it. I would not like that trend tomorrow night because they did win their last one. So so they obviously haven't been doing that at home this season since they're 1-4. Tomorrow night's matchup. Tomorrow night is the first and only home game against Columbus. We don't play them again until April, so near the end of the season. Last year, Nashville won both games against Columbus, 2-1 in March in Columbus and 6-4 in April at home. The Preds won Tuesday. They play tonight in Chicago. And then Columbus won their game on Tuesday, their last game. So the Preds won their last game Tuesday, but they play tonight. So we'll see, how they're going in tomorrow night's game really depends on tonight. They will be going in on a 2-game winning streak. They will be going in on a 2-game winning streak. The Preds stats at home. The Preds are 1-4 at home. They won their last game at home on Tuesday in Boston. In that game, they got the first goal of the game, and that was the 3rd game in the row that they got the first goal of the game, and it was also in the first period. So far, getting the first goal of the game, they're 1-2. Not the strongest indicator, but they haven't had the strongest start. So we'll see how that shakes out the rest of the season. That goal was the only good scoring in the first period, and so the Preds won the first period for the first time this season. The second period included another Preds goal, Skay's first assist. Remember, I characterized him as more of an assist person, and so the first thing he did when he got to the Nashville was score a goal. But now he's got an assist. And so this was also the only scoring in the second period, so the Preds won the second period in this game, and it was just the second time this season they have won the second period. So now they've won the first period and they've won the second period. Winning 2 periods last season indicated that the team would win the game. They never lost when they won 2 periods, and they never won when they lost 2 periods at home. As I mentioned, away once they won 2 and lost 2 because they won in overtime. But that was on the road, which this game against Columbus will be at home. Okay. The Preds got 2 goals about a minute apart in the third. The first was just before the 13-minute mark, and the second was an empty netter. No scoring by Boston in the third period either, so they won the third period for just the second time this season. So they won all 3 periods, which strong indicator of winning the game. I guess because Boston lost all 3 or did not win 1. But hey, it's all statistics. Finally, they got the first goal of the game and then won. So, yeah. Defenseman Mark Delgado did play in both the Detroit and Boston games. I predicted he would get the game winner in the third period, but he did play. So Delgado has played in 2 games this year. Fabro is the defenseman that he replaced, who's played in the 4 games before that. So they're shaking up the lineup a little bit. We'll see how it moves forward like that. Another change to the lineup for the Boston game was left winger Zachary. It's Heureux. Le Heureux. Heureux in French means happy. So I when I see it, I have to say it that way, but the announcers were pronouncing his last name a different way, and I kept practicing when they would say it, and I can't recall it. I just too many years of French. L'Heureux. I don't know. Maybe it's L'Heureux. I don't know. But Heureux was happy to be called up. And he played in the Boston game. He playing in that position. Tomasino has been there for 4 games, and Parsonen was there for 1. So, I'm not sure how they're going to do it tonight, tomorrow night, but potentially we'll see Delgado in both games and Heureux also. As far as other things happening, as far as trends, there have been no ties in the second and third periods so far. And then as far as scoring goes, with the win against Boston, they are now even in the first period at 5-5. In the second period, they are still losing 4-8. The second period strife is when I first created my spreadsheet, that's what it was called, second period strife. And for those of you that may be new to the show, I started doing these statistics last year because I thought the Preds sucked at home in the second period, and I wanted to prove to myself that I was right or disprove it, so I would, give it up. But I was right. And the game in Boston, obviously, or game against Boston. I don't know why I want to keep thinking they were in Boston, but the game against Boston obviously was different. And then in the third period, they are down 5-10, but that's 5 empty net goals for the opposition and 1 for the Preds, so that would technically be 4-5 without when the goaltender is in. So the scoring in the third period, 4-5, that's pretty even. The first period, 5-5. The problem, again, the fourth period, 4-8. Remember, Dallas in the first game scored 4 in the second, so there's your 4 goals right there. So you take that game out, and things are looking, of course you'd have to take the 2 out for the Preds in the third and 1 out in the second, but yada, yada, yada. The scoring is coming around. Well, they got 4 goals the other night, so so they're starting to catch up. But there you go. So that's the scoring differential starting to look a little more even. We prefer to see the Preds scoring a little bit more, but that will come around. Shouldn't have a problem with that. I mean, that's part of the reason of getting Marchessault and Stamkos is to increase the number of scoring. But they've got to. They also have to keep the defense up, and that's one of the things I did notice that in the preview to the Boston game, the Preds announcers were saying the same thing I've been saying, that the defensemen are out of sync and they're giving away too many odd man rushes, and me. If you've been listening to the show, I'm not a huge Saros fan. I'm not a Saros fan. I don't dislike the guy. I just he's a solid goaltender, but he does give up too many, in my opinion, too many weak goals, and at bad times. But most of the problem's not his fault. The Preds have this capacity of leaving somebody, one of the opposition, alone in front of the goaltender and then allowing him to get the puck. And with this, the goaltender's kind of on an island at that point, and can make the stop, but really the advantage is with the shooter, especially if they are a good shooter. So can't really blame Saros in those situations. But anyway, so that is the stats for the Preds at home. Again, we are on the road tonight in Chicago. We are home tomorrow night against Columbus. Last year, we swept both of those teams. I expect the Preds to sweep both games tonight. That will be great. Be fun. I don't think tonight's game is on TV. I think it's on ESPN+. So if you want to catch the game tonight, you're going to need to listen to it. Unless you have ESPN+. I don't. We've got 45 different streaming services. We don't have that one. It's really pretty annoying having to have all these streaming services for everything. But what are you going to do? So it's not on TV. You can listen to 102.5 The Game here in Nashville, or if you're not in Nashville, 102.5 The Game out of Nashville will have the game at 7:30 tonight. 7:30 Central Time, I believe, is game time. 7:30 Central Time. It says it's on Hulu. No, you might have Hulu. Probably more likely to have Hulu than ESPN+. And this is your this is your podcast to complain about all the streaming services. Anyhow, that's the situation. Chicago tonight, 7:30, and then tomorrow night. Oh, it looks like tomorrow night's game is on ESPN+ as well. I'll be at the Columbus game, planning to go to the game anyway. We'll see how that goes. Playing golf earlier in the day, and I've been having a lot of knee problems this week. It's not a podcast about my medical problems either. But anyhow, anyway, tonight's game is on ESPN+ against Chicago, in Chicago, and then tomorrow night, Nashville, Columbus. Thanks for listening. Sorry about all the diversions, but this is Predators Proclivity, and I'm Preston Proctor. Thanks for listening to Predators Proclivity.